Are scapegoats crazy? I was often called crazy, and I did at times get crazy with anger, but it was because my older siblings, who I had to obey, kept tormenting me. Our parents always took their side, and I could tell no one at school. The added layer of my Asian culture meant I had to keep the honor of the family as well. I had the unspoken duty to uphold my Asian family, my abusers. I had to make sure they looked perfect for the public. This was one of the many things that made me crazy. Another thing that made me crazy is that Asian cultures do not listen to girls. My own mother could not hear my pleas that my older siblings were lying. She automatically believed them, and not her youngest daughter who was crying from constantly being beaten. It seemed no matter what I did, she could not hear me or see who I really was, and she carried this grudge against me because Asian mothers carry grudges for lifetimes. Asian parents rarely show any outward signs of love. Instead, they amply give out criticism. So, avoiding criticism was how my siblings sought to get love. If I was beaten, made into the bad girl, then by default, my siblings were the good children. My siblings quickly learned that a story about being wasteful would trigger our frugal mother into a rage. They made our parents believe I was the problem by concocting stories about me wasting food, clothes, anything of value. When I objected that the fabricated stories were not true, my siblings said I was a liar. I was outnumbered by three older siblings, so our mother believed them even when I was sobbing for mercy. Why could she not hear me? I believe it goes back to the Asian preference for boys. If I had been the youngest son, she would have listened to me. Gender preference was ingrained into her, and she also abided by another Asian rule: respect your elders. Even though my siblings were kids, just because they were a few years older, I had to obey them. Soon my siblings became sadistic as they abused this rule under the approval of our unhappy mother. Why was our mother like this? I believe she had unresolved anger over opportunities she could not pursue because they were for her brothers. Asian culture is patriarchal, and this unfair position that she had no ability to change made my mother easily agitated. She could not express her complaints to her elders, so she took her anger out on her children. My mother and my older siblings all enjoyed releasing their collective rage onto me, watching me cry as I was beaten by my father for no reason. When I was not being beaten, my siblings humiliated me in other ways. My older siblings enjoyed depriving me of food and basic necessities that they doled out amongst themselves. They enjoyed excluding me from everything a normal child would have. These cruel, childish, crazy rules were rules set only for me. Most families will cater to the sickest member, taking care of them, meeting the needs of that member. In abusive families, the family follows the rules of the most crazy person. These rules are abnormal and abusive. The abusive Asian family makes the scapegoat crazy. We are driven crazy by our families ignoring us, diminishing our feelings, blaming us for things we didn't do, moving goalposts, breadcrumbing us with small hopes like maybe we might get $1 or a piece of candy if we behave. They gaslight us and they triangulate. My oldest sibling used our siblings to form a triad. In retrospect, I concluded that this was the way my older siblings bonded because they wanted to avoid the harsh criticism that would come from our unhappy Asian mother. My siblings learned the best way to avoid her harsh tongue was to make me the target of torment. Together, their triad smeared me with names. First I had cooties, then I was a liar, then I became the permanent troublemaker, and then I was crazy. They had driven me crazy. I was crazy with anger at being unfairly beaten for things I did not do. I yelled at them, defending myself from their beatings and their false accusations. I had to yell to be heard, and when I yelled, They used it as a confirmation that I was crazy. I was 27 years old when the truth was finally heard by our mother. She still wouldn't believe me when I confronted her, so I had to force one of my siblings to come to the house and fess up to their lies. Our mother was devastated to realize she had abused me unfairly for so many years. A few days later, I went to confront my oldest sibling, but before I was to see my abusive sibling, a wise friend warned me not to yell, that speaking calmly would allow my words to be heard. As I braced myself to confront my abuser, to get the apology I was owed, I told myself I would remain calm. When I arrived at their house, it was empty. The entitled golden child, who was parentified too young, now had their own children and family, but to guard their image, had sent their spouse and child away because I, the crazy youngest sibling, needed to discuss childish stuff. Their statement belittled my need for a reckoning. It also made it seem like it was my doing, when it was my sibling who had come up with the favorite family game of ganging up on me. It was their childish stuff that had set the pattern for our entire family, the favorite game of family mobbing. Now we were adults, and I would speak calmly to them about our past. I asked them questions, and my eldest sibling relied on their old standby and said, "You're crazy. You're making it up." For every question I asked of them, they just repeated, "You're crazy. You're crazy. You're crazy. You're crazy." My oldest sibling was an adult now, and they were doing the same thing they'd always done, the same thing that narcissistic abusers always do. They deflect any responsibility and say, "You're the crazy one." I left their house with an understanding that something was broken inside of them. A black hole of insecurity and jealousy lived in their abdomen. I left knowing they would never apologize to me. When you're a scapegoat, you are alone in your pain and anger. You feel like no one will understand or even believe you. I was all alone in my Asian family. The family system catered to this entitled child. I did my best to stay away from home. I relished school, but even with my classmates, I felt I didn't fit in with the Americans. How could I when I had this abnormal family? When I was home, I found places to hide. I found comfort in my solitude. Years later, the oldest sibling left the house for college, and I could finally breathe. I began to thrive in high school, and my parents began to like me for my achievements. When I moved away from my childhood home, I could start my own life with my own normal rules. Are scapegoats crazy? My answer is scapegoats are made crazy. They drove you crazy, but you are not crazy. All this time, I had been made to think I was the problem child. I was told that I was driving the family crazy, but they were the ones who were crazy. This was my experience, and by making this vlog, I hope you feel less alone. Please subscribe so you can know when I post my next installment. I'll be posting more vlogs about topics no one really talks about. Also, if you'd like to suggest something, please leave a comment. Comments always lead to interesting discussions.